Welcome back to the show. Joining us today is Dr. Yasir Jassam from Hoag's Pickup Family Neurosciences Institute to highlight information on multiple sclerosis. Welcome to the show. It's so nice to have you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming down and joining us. I know that this is a not a hugely widely known disease. I've heard of it a few times. So if we could just start off with the very basics to help me understand and some of our viewers understand, what exactly is multiple sclerosis, otherwise known as MS, correct?
Correct, yeah, sure. No, so yeah, thank you for having me. MS, or multiple sclerosis, is an autoimmune disease.
Okay.
And that means the immune system of the body starts to attack the nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord. And as you rightly said, it's not a very common disease. The incidence or the amount of people that suffers from that disease in the United States is about 1 million patients. Now,
It's not very many.
No, it's not that very many. But what is concerning is that over the last decade, we saw a jump. So there are about 400,000 people probably when we did the last head count on this disease.
What do you attribute that to?
It's a very good question. We don't know is the answer. Some of the attributions that we know more about the disease, so we can check more for it. We're doing more MRIs. We have more advanced tests to detect it. But there's true increased incidence of the disease, and almost all autoimmune diseases, some of which is attributed to all the lifestyle changes that has happened, a lot of the viral infections, the pollution. There's no one good answer. But what we know is MS on the rise. Now, MS in itself is very heterogeneous disease, which means it can show up in different forms, what we call phenotypes. It can present in something called a relapsing remitting form. And what does that mean? That the attack comes in waves. It hits, causing disability, then it improves, and then it will be out, what we call a remission. So the patient wouldn't feel much for a while, and then it might come back again.
Really?
Yes. Now, the other form of it is something called progressive MS, where the patient doesn't get that many of those attacks, but they just slowly get worse with time. And this subtype is not very common, and it's actually not very well known to patients, but it's also the most disabling.
What is it doing to the body?
Great question.
What's going on inside?
Yeah. It's actually a very interesting question, because most of MS patients will come and tell you, people look at me and they tell me, I look fine. Why do I say that I have a disease? Because on the outside, the person will still be okay. And remember, this is a disease that usually affects young adults. So usually patients between the age of 20 and 40 years old, although it can go from 2 years old to 80 years old. So there's no age for MS. That's what we usually say. Now, what happens inside, the immune system gets a misinformation that this part of the body is a foreign antigen, a foreign enemy, and we need to attack it and destroy it.
Wow.
Now, there are so many theories to why this happened, but basically it's a misinterpretation of the immune system. And the immune system is our security guards, our police forces, the army of the body. So their job is to keep the body safe. So when they turn against us, against our own bodies, and start to attack us, they start to take chips or pieces out of that nervous system and destroy it. And it depends where they hit, that will cause the symptom. For example, if they attack the nerve of the eye, the person will not be able to see.
Wow.
And if they attack the nerve of the bladder, they wouldn't be able to pass urine or go normally or control their bladder. And if it attacks that one of the legs, then they wouldn't be able to walk.
Oh my gosh.
And that's why it can present in a very heterogeneous way. It can show itself in so many different forms. It depends where you go.
Wow. So are there outward symptoms, or is it just someone says, something's just off, something's not right, I should just go get checked or tested? Or is that the only way that you're going to figure out how?
That question of yours brings us to the very core of what's happening now in MS. Back in the day, we believed that MS only happens when the attack happens. So people used to come to us when they lose vision, they can't walk, they can't talk, they can't use their hand, something like a stroke. So they come in retrospect, with the attack.
Right.
But now we know there is something called a prodrome for MS, which means that the disease starts years before we start to see it. We now believe that the disease starts around puberty age. And the core for that is an infection with a virus called the Epstein-Barr virus, or what actually causes infectious mononucleosis, the disease known in the community as mono. So if you get mono, just around puberty time, you're at high risk of having MS.
Is that right?
And there are a few years of not feeling well before the disease. Something is a combination of stress, fatigue, depression, and some cognitive dysfunction. The patient can't put a finger on it, but they just tell you that there is something that I don't feel to be going okay. I'm not myself. But they can't usually tell you what's going on until they come with that attack or that episode. That will be what we call the revealing moment.
At that point, Dr. Yasmin, is it too late to reverse anything that has happened to either the eye, your examples, the bladder, the hand?
So yes and no. That's the kind of the difficult part of the disease when we educate our patients. You truly can't fix the damage by any medication, but the body fixes itself by healing. And people heal in different ways. So some people are what we call good healers, which means that the symptoms will go away completely, and some people don't heal very well. And we don't know why there's such a difference, but it's a very subjective and personalized issue. It depends on the person's health, level of exercise, diet, genetics, a lot of that. But once that attack is resolved, there is always a little bit of damage that is left behind.
Sure.
And that's why the most common wisdom we have with MS is you don't treat attack, you prevent them. You don't want them to happen in the first place. So you want to be on the most efficacious way or treatment to prevent any attacks from happening.
Gosh, that's so scary.
No, it can
So,
be.
I mean, are there tests being done on children to diagnose any type of potential disease that could develop?
Again, this question is very close to my heart. So the answer is no, we don't screen for MS. But we at Hoag are starting a study where we go and try to obtain samples from relatives of MS patients, first-degree relatives, because they have the highest risk. And we want to test their blood samples, and we want to put them through the various tests to say if we can ever predict if somebody is at high risk of MS versus somebody else. Because then, and only then, we can intervene early, and we can prevent it from maybe starting in the first place.
Right, right. So you've won innovation awards to further research for MS. How'd you get your passion for this specific area of medicine?
So I've always been intrigued by the brain. It's a very complex machine, and what it does is very intriguing. The immune system is another intriguing system, and neuroimmunology is the marriage between the nervous system and the immune system. Now, how I got into MS was a very touching story. I was a very junior resident, which is a trainee, doing one of my very first jobs in neurology, and I saw a lady being pushed in by her husband in a wheelchair after she has lost the ability to walk. And with them was a 4-year-old daughter. And we were given the task always as junior trainees to admit the patient, get their paperwork done, prepare them for doing what needs to be done. But the major decisions of care are usually in the hands of the specialists. Right. But that daughter decides to come to me because she saw me, I'm the guy in the white coat, talking to her mom first. And she said, before she left with her dad, she said, "Can you make mommy better?" And I had very little say in it. But I said, "I'll try." So, the weeks goes and the whole team gets on top of the case, and she's treated, she does physical therapy, and she leaves the hospital walking. And as she was leaving with her family again, that same little girl told her daddy, or her father, he said, "Daddy, Daddy, this is the doctor that made mommy walk again." And to me, this was kind of a sold moment. I know that this is truly what I wanted to do for a living.
That's fantastic.
It's
What a
very
great
rewarding.
story. What a great story. Real quick, we've got about 30 more seconds, but can you wrap up the differences between Alzheimer's and MS?
Sure. So Alzheimer's is by definition not an autoimmune disease. It's a degenerative disease, which means the brain just starts to decay or to become weaker for reasons that we don't understand. MS, interestingly, has that same feature, but late in the course of the disease. And we now think that the destroying part of MS starts very early. They both can affect memory. They both can affect concentration. But the major difference is that one, which is MS, you can make better by tackling the immune system. In Alzheimer's, it is not clearly that we can do that yet.
Interesting. Well, we certainly appreciate all of the hard work, dedication, everything that you bring to this particular subject, multiple sclerosis.
Thank you.
Everything that you do for the community. Thank you for being here, Doctor.
Well, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
You're watching This Day on Village TV. We'll be right back after these messages.